It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome back to an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, on a Friday, like a feel-good Friday, doesn't the music just hit a little bit different, even more so than normal, just because you know you're not going to hear it for a couple days?
It does. It does. We've been having some stress at SteelersNow.com. We're having some technical gremlins with the behind-the-scene part of the website, and it's been a very pull-my-hair-out-at-work kind of day, which I, as someone who has what I consider like one of the coolest possible jobs, does not have very often. Like, it takes something like that, right, to make me be like, ah! But then you get the...
Yep.
And I'm just back. I'm back. I'm ready to go.
You know what, dude? I feel like even the people that watch or listen to the show probably realized something was up because, like, the way that the show had to be put out yesterday.
Yeah, it was a little wonky, right?
Yeah, I had to put out the video form and the audio form separately as posts, and then like later on, all of a sudden, an article popped up. So yeah, there was some issues going on in the back end.
I will say that
back? Are we all the way back?
No, we're mostly back. We're mostly back.
Okay.
I will say that my wife has told me that I come back downstairs after recording the podcast in a better mood. That I actually that this is like, I don't know. It's good. I'm mostly attributed to the music. I think the music just makes everybody
okay.
happy.
Yeah, I was just saying, spending about a half hour with me cannot be the reason because my friend group would probably greatly disagree.
No,
with
this
it.
is great. This is great.
Alan, we owe some thanks for the topics for today's show. We got some questions that we want to address on today's show, which is, I feel like it hasn't been a while since we've gotten to some questions, but plucked them from YouTube, certainly. So Jeff Hewitt on yesterday's show commented, surprised that you're not acknowledging the Tomlin factor. I think he's going to make a statement this year that will quiet the naysayers on his coaching ability once and for all. This due to, obviously the strength of schedule. Steelers have a very tough schedule. People really highlighting that back end, right? Post bye, so post bye they play Washington, but then the stretch immediately after that where it's all the division games, Philly and KC. This is an interesting topic, though, I think, Alan. And what say you to this?
Well, I kind of like the idea. I said yesterday, I like the idea of the division games being at the end. And also, when you look at what the Steelers' recent history has been in the AFC North, you have to feel pretty good about it. They are 16-8 in AFC North games since 2020, and they have not been the best talent team in the division in that span. Like, I think that's pretty clear. And so I think you feel good about Mike Tomlin matching up against the other teams in the AFC North. I think you can say that there's been problems with Mike Tomlin's tenure, and clearly like some stumbling blocks with some bad teams last year in the middle to late part of the schedule kind of really sent this team into a tailspin that it took a little bit to pull out of. But man, he does well against the AFC North. He always has. And I think certainly that should give you, in fact, Art Rooney in one of the stories we had yesterday did address it, said, look, we can't take it for granted, but we should feel pretty good about our chances in the division, all things considered, because of Mike Tomlin. And I do agree. I think the Steelers have an advantage, a scheme advantage. I also think part of it is just a maybe stylistic thing. I think the Steelers play well against the Lamar Jackson and Deshaun Watson is a very similar style of quarterback. I just think that scheme fits the Steelers defense very well. They want you to throw the ball like all the time anyway. Like the Steelers are designed to stop the run, right? That's what they do first and foremost. And if you have a running quarterback, they're like, great, we're just going to turn you into a pocket passer. This is what we're built to do. Like, this is what we want to do anyway. And the Ravens haven't really had the receiving talent to make them pay for that mindset. And the Browns haven't kept Deshaun Watson on the field and also don't really have the receiving talent. And so I think styles make fights. I think Burrow's Bengals are going to present a lot greater challenge stylistically for the Steelers than what the Browns and the Ravens can cook up. But I think they should feel good for a couple reasons about those division games. I mean, I think we said yesterday, like the trip to Philly and Kansas City, those are tough. Steelers haven't won in Philadelphia since the 60s. Not that like all of that history is relevant or any of it really, but that, I mean, I don't know how you can feel great about those two there.
I was talking with Nick about Philly, and because he made me, and again, we're pretty far away right now from the season starting, but like he kind of, I don't want to say rejuvenated or restored some faith in that matchup for me. But if you look at what they did last year, really weren't all that great in terms of stopping the run. Like in the trenches on the defensive side, they've taken a step back, and even offensively, when it was just Sirianni last year, right? They lost Shane Steichen to Indy, and they lost Jonathan Gannon to Arizona. I feel differently about that Philly team going into 2024 than I did going into 2023 off of their 2022.
I don't know, man. Their draft is so good again. Like
the draft again. Yeah.
I mean, they have great players. I think I still have some questions about how good of a head coach Nick Sirianni is, and certainly like the quality of the coordinator has been pretty variable, right, over the last few years, and you've kind of seen them ride the wave up and down with that. But man, I think that's a pretty good team. I don't know. I'm not picking against them.
Yeah, getting Vic Fangio in there basically just because he wanted to be there. Like he wasn't that bad in Miami, lost basically his entire defense, kept them afloat, and then they part ways and he just lands in Philadelphia. He's really good. So yeah, I mean, I still think Philly's going to be a very good team. But I going to your point where questions about Nick Sirianni as a head coach. I know that there's obviously going to be a subset of the fan base that loves this and a subset of the fan base that hates this. But I do feel like Tomlin is the great equalizer for the Steelers in the AFC North.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, whether you like or love Tomlin, I think you need to acknowledge that he's pretty good at coming up with different ways to beat a team that he sees over and over again. Like most of the Mike Tomlin, whether you want to call them like bad games or hiccup games, it's the teams that don't see that often. Like historically over the course of his tenure, it's been those random weird like West Coast trip against a bad team that they'll trip and fall on. Like they get up for, is it X's and O's? Is it motivation? I don't know. I think it's probably a little bit of both, but like they handle their business in the AFC North and they always have. And so I do think that's a reason to feel good or maybe feel better about those games being crammed together at the end of the year. And I think there's definitely some, like, I think we've overrated the impact that those games are going to have on this team's season. Like they had to play them all anyway. And there was going to be bunches of them somewhere anyway. Like you can't build, even if you're a Steelers fan and you're like, let's set these 17 games in the friendliest, most Steelers forward order that would make it as easy as possible for the Steelers to win the most of those games that they could. There's still going to be 3-4 game stretches that are brutal. Like even 5-6 game stretches that are brutal. Like you can't escape it. There are too many good teams. So like I think we've honestly kind of like overreacted to the schedule in terms of the discourse about the Steelers, like Colin Cowherd. Not that Colin Cowherd always knows everything about the Steelers, but like saying like, oh, this is going to be what's going to put Mike Tomlin to TV, and people talking about, oh, Mike Tomlin's win streak is in jeopardy, and I'm like, were we just talking about this team like desperately needing to win a playoff game, like literally this week? Like that was a topic of conversation on this show this week. I like. We knew what teams they were playing. We knew it was going to be a difficult schedule. I don't think that the order that they're in matters all that much.
Even if you look back to last year, they played 2 divisional games before they're playing their first one this year. But that's okay. So you played 2 in the first 5 weeks, and then none until whatever week they finally went to Cleveland. But like they were pretty much backloaded last year too. That's typically how they are. It's just weird that it's all 6 as opposed to at least 1 or 2 being on the front end. But to your point, like what does it matter? I've come around to the idea, even I was pretty much neutral, but I've come around to the idea of it even more, that I like it at this point, because they should still be like everything is still on the table by that point. Like having not played a division game before week 11, everything should still be in front of you.
Yeah. And the other thing I'll say this is that go look at the win totals today and compare them to Monday at Vegas. Nobody's changed. Nobody's win total changed based on the order that the games are played in. So if you thought the Steelers were going to be a 9 or 10 win team before you saw the order of the games, you should still think they're a 9 or 10 win team now. Now, if you were egregiously optimistic or pessimistic, I don't think you should necessarily change your mind because of that either. But I think think we've made too big of a deal about the order of the games. We knew that there were going to be challenging games on the schedule. The hardest part of the schedule is the AFC North. Like that's there was a question on YouTube yesterday from a let me see if I can find it here. It was from James Chestnut. Is it related to Joey Chestnut, the famous hot dog eater, perhaps? Uncommon last name. Anyway, James Chestnut asked, why don't the Chiefs have the most difficult schedule? And it's because only 3 games change depending on who you beat and how well you finished last year. Mm-hmm. So every team plays their division twice, one whole division in their conference, one whole division in the other conference, and then 3 teams, one from each of the other conference divisions and one from an opposing conference division that finished in the same place as them. So we knew all 14 of the 17 Steelers games before we started the 2023 season for 2024. So it doesn't matter that much about how good you are. What really matters about your strength of schedule is how good your division is. And I think the AFC North looks like on paper the best division in football this year. And then how difficult the divisions you play are. The NFC East, it's got 2 pretty good teams in Philadelphia and Dallas. I mean, I'm not sure the bottom is as strong, but it's certainly, the top is up there. And then the Steelers are playing the AFC. Which one are they playing? They're playing the West. Yeah. So, I mean,
Kansas City.
You get Kansas City, right? And so the rest of the West, you're probably not that challenging, but that's what makes the Steelers schedule difficult, not the fact that they finished in a specific place in their division. And I can actually tell you what so the Steelers finished in 3rd place. And so because they finished in 3rd place, they got the Jets and the Colts this year. So like if they had finished in 1st place, they would have got the Bills and the Texans. So, I mean, it does make a difference. And what's the other one they're playing? The other random is Atlanta. They would have played Tampa. No difference in the NFC South. Who cares? But I mean, it does make a difference with those 2 games, but really, when you're talking about the difference in the schedule, it's really only 2 or 3 games. Everything else is already calculated. So, yeah, I mean, I just think in general, I understand it's a news item and it's a big part of the schedule, but I don't think your feelings about the Steelers season should have changed very much just by finding out the order of the games.
I don't know if everybody realizes the way that the schedule is done. Because I see a lot of people still talking about screwing the Steelers, but not even based off the order of games, talking about the teams that they're playing. That's not, they don't hand pick who's playing who or pull them out of a hat.
All that is done. The only thing that is decided by person is, the order of the games and then who's playing night games. And I'll be honest, the order of the games is mostly done by computer now. People are putting in, okay, these are the games we want for we would prefer to have for night games, for national TV windows, things like that. And then the rest of it's all filled in however it gets filled in, algorithmically.
How is the 17th game? We play Atlanta this year. Last year it was who was the random game last year? That additional 17th one. How's that figured out?
I think it was. No, it wasn't Seattle.
Well, no, because they still played.
You just rotate through the other, and it's the same place team in an NFC division, and you rotate through the NFC divisions.
Oh, okay, interesting. All right.
So they played. So it was let's see, what was the first year of the extra game? 2021.
I thought it was 22. Maybe it was 21.
I think it was 2021. Yeah, and the Steelers played 2021. The Steelers played Green Bay, Chicago, Detroit. So they played the North, but they also played Seattle. That was their extra game.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah. Okay.
So then in 2022, they played the Eagles as the extra game. They played Tampa, New Orleans, Atlanta, the South. In 2023, they played the West, and then the extra game was the Packers last year. And it alternates home and road. And so next year it will be we'll be back to the start, right? So it'll be the same place team in the NFC West, and they will get Here, the teams from the normal part of the schedule will be the NFC North.
Okay. There we go. There we have it. I actually didn't know how that was figured out. So
yeah,
good information for me as well.
So we already know the Steelers in 2025 are going to play the Bengals twice, the Browns twice, the Ravens twice. They will play the entire AFC East, the Bills, the Dolphins, the Patriots, and the Jets. They'll play the entire NFC North, the Vikings, the Bears, the Lions, and the Packers. And then there will be 2 games, TBD. There'll be one team from the AFC West, one team from the AFC South, and one team from the NFC West.
There we go. Okay. The other thing that we got was also schedule related. Question from my guy Joe Aber here, who's taking a little bit longer look perspective on this. He tweeted at us and said, "Does the schedule even matter for the Steelers? They should have 2 goals this season: finding your quarterback and learning the offense, scoring more than 17 points a game. Then 2025 could be interesting."
I do think this team is a year away from being a Super Bowl contender, at least. Like it's a year away if the quarterback play turns out pretty good. But I think it's kind of goes back to the conversation we were having earlier in the week, right? If you're kind of the Super Bowl or bust mentality, then no, the schedule doesn't really matter, right? Because they probably weren't a Super Bowl favorite no matter what order you put the games in, and they certainly aren't right now. I don't know if you're the kind of person that would feel that like winning a playoff game or getting to the playoffs again would represent some kind of significant step, then I guess the difficulty of doing that becomes important to you. But I don't know. I think this is probably more of a you question than a me question.
Yeah, I mean, because we've talked on here about like, the goal isn't going to be to win a playoff game, but like the fans have just been like chomping at the bit for it to happen, just to get that off their back, because it's just been so long since they've done it. I do like the idea. It's the same thing as like last year where people were like, do we even care if they make the playoffs? I always want to make the playoffs. I want them to play as many games as possible. And from like a football perspective, team building perspective, I want guys that haven't done it yet to get that experience. So typically it's like with a rookie class coming in. So now
one of the things that I think was the big deal about going to Buffalo last year, like you had a lot of young guys that were not around in Kansas City 2 years prior. Like that was a big deal.
Yeah, so like my main thing last year was like, yeah, I want to make the playoffs. I want to see how they respond in Buffalo. I want to see what Joey Porter Jr. looks like, in his first playoff game going against that receiving core. So like it's always going to me be about the young guys that haven't done it yet, getting their feet wet, getting that experience in the postseason. So I'm always aiming to do that, even if I do think that like the team isn't quite at that caliber to be able to compete with the Kansas Cities, the Buffaloes, a healthy Cincinnati team necessarily of the world.
Yeah, I mean, they're not a Super Bowl favorite. I don't think that means the season is useless in terms of just like accomplishing anything from team perspective. I do think though that, I mean, he's on a point, right? Where like if the Steelers, let's say the Steelers have the best defense in the league, the best. Everybody stays healthy. Cam is back to 2022 Cam, and Minka is back to 2022 Minka, and Alex Highsmith continues to grow. Joey Porter continues to grow. Kenny Benton continues to grow. Patrick Queen's an all-pro again. Like, they have the best defense in the land. And the offensive line changes seem to stick, and Najee Harris and Jalen Warren both run for 1,000 yards. And they go 6 games of Russell Wilson with a 74 passer rating before they bench him for Justin Fields, who finishes the year with a 69 passer rating and 20 interceptions. But somehow they're 9-8 and make the playoffs, and then go win a playoff game just based on the running game and that strong defense. Yeah, like you're not better at the end of the year for doing that, right? Like
you just took me on the wildest roller coaster experience of my life. Everything you were saying, I was like, yeah. And then we got to the quarterbacks, which is ultimately what matters, because it's the same thing as like last year. It was like if the Steelers overall aren't that much better, but you find the answer. Like last year, we were obviously having the conversation about Kenny Pickett as opposed to this year quarterbacks, but you find out that Kenny Pickett is the guy. Is that a successful season? Long term, yes. You find out you have the guy at quarterback, yeah. But like, so on the opposite end of that now, if everything else goes well, but they don't find out anything about the quarterback position, you go into 2025, 2026 season not knowing what your answer is at quarterback.
Honestly, I'll say this, like that scenario is a lot better than if they're both just meh. Like, at least if they're bad, you
just
move on, right? Let's say like Russell Wilson has like 5 pretty good games, but not high 80 passer rating, like tolerable but not great. Then he like pulls a hamstring, misses 5 games. Fields goes on a roller coaster where he looks awesome for 2 games and then like single-handedly loses the next 3, and then you get Wilson back and he's mediocre again. And it's like, we didn't learn anything, right? Like, that's possible too. Like that could absolutely happen. Mm-hmm. I think that's honestly a worst case scenario than the one I laid out before, where you knew just never mind. Neither of these guys are the answer. We're moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know how much, because this could turn into a different conversation where we're talking about the people that like want them to be terrible as a team as opposed to middle of the road because of like where they would draft. But like that would probably come into that conversation as well, because if the quarterback, if you feel like you don't have a solution or you're just middle of the road at quarterback and end up because of that being a little bit better football, like a fringe 500-ish team, then you're not in a position again to draft a guy either.
Well, I think my argument there would be, if you're a good enough team that you can get to 500 with bad quarterback play repeatedly, and maybe even be a playoff team with bad quarterback play, then you probably don't need all 7 draft picks. So go trade up and get your guy. Like that's kind of where I'm at with that, where it's like, if you have a good team, if it's the scenario I laid out where the Steelers have the best defense in the league, the running game is humming, the offensive line looks great, and the quarterback position is the one thing holding you back, then you trade your entire draft class to go up and get the top quarterback. And you feel good about doing it because everybody else is in a good place. Like that's how you get there without getting bad. It's what the Kansas City Chiefs did. The Kansas City Chiefs had a pretty good team with Alex Smith, and they were like, nah, we need to find the better one. And then they did. They went up and got Mahomes and made it happen. You also need to have a draft class with that guy in it. You're probably not going to be able to trade up to number 1 most years. Most of the time, the team that finishes dead last wants that pick. They won't trade it for anything. So you need a draft where there is some kind of elite quarterback talent beyond the first pick that you think is worth making that move for. Even if the Steelers had been in the position I laid out last year, would you have traded the farm for Drake May or Jaden Daniels? I don't know that I feel that way about those guys. I don't know. You have to have the opportunity, and you have to have the right player. It's why quarterback is so valuable, because getting that guy is extremely rare.
Yeah, I mean, on the surface, Drake May would be the guy for me if they were going to do that. You had to do.
But I don't know. Would you trade your whole draft for Drake May?
I mean, because and the other part of it too is like, I'm not saying, I kind of like the approach that it seems like a lot of teams are going back to, where we're not seeing these guys start right away. But like, there's a lot of footwork stuff to clean up with him that I don't think that he could. Like, if you trade your entire farm for him, you're going to have the fans clamoring for it. Not that they have to listen to fans, but I'm just throwing that out there as well. Like, he's not a guy that you're starting day 1 either. So I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Joe's question definitely got my mind going, just because like I was curious as to where he was at then with this season. Like, so for him, is this entire year just finding out about the quarterback and them scoring more than 17 points a game and hoping that 2025 is the year then?
I don't know. I think for me, that's pretty reductive. Like, there are about 4 teams in the NFL, 5 teams in the NFL that you could put on a lie detector and would pass with the sentence, "We are perfectly happy with our quarterback situation." Like, who's saying that? Cincy, Buffalo, Kansas City, Baltimore,
Chargers.
Baltimore Chargers. Very few, right? No, not that many teams.
Honestly, is there maybe some skepticism in Cincinnati because of Joe's wrist?
And Lamar has not won the playoffs. Sure. Like, you can sit there and poke holes in even the best guys. Like, and so, if all you're worried about is finding a quarterback, you can be pretty disappointed for a very long time. I don't know. I'm not telling people how to be a fan, but if you're
Houston's probably feeling really good right now.
Houston feels good. Too. Yeah, I agree with that. Right now, we'll see if they still feel good next year. Like, that's always the thing there. But like, I'm not telling people how to be a fan, but if in order for you to feel good about your team, you have to have a dominant quarterback, the odds say you're not likely to feel very good very often. Like, those guys don't come around. You know, what percentage of the league has one of those guys at any given moment? 5 tops? Like, not even most of the time. There's been stretches where there's 1 or 2, and that's it. If you didn't have Tom Brady, even when you had Peyton Manning, you didn't feel good about it, right? Like, even when you had Ben Roethlisberger or Drew Brees, you didn't feel good about it. And so, you know, I think it's I think that's a pretty tough way to look at the sport. I'm not saying it's wrong. I just think you're setting yourself up to not be very happy very often if that's what you're going for.
Yeah. I mean, I just keep going. Like, are we ever going to have a period of time where we don't have like an alien? Like, not to say like Brady wasn't that physically, but just like the dominance. And then we just go right into the Mahomes era from Brady.
I mean, I think you can argue that there really wasn't one between the kind of like Elway, Marino, Kelly, Montana period to Brady. Like there was a pretty decent sized lull in there in the later part of the 90s
where it was like a somewhat equal playing field at the position. Because like now it seems like Mahomes is the equalizer
Mahomes
for that.
Brady
like,
again, but better, maybe like
Yeah.
more physically dominant anyway. Maybe he doesn't have like the same grasp of the game, but
Sure.
man, like,
But the point is, like, you could feel like top to bottom roster wise, you're there, but you don't have him.
yeah,
And they do.
yeah, absolutely. And like in the top to bottom roster doesn't matter that much. Like, how many, if you rank the teams 1 through 32 right now, how far down that list would you not make that team first if they got Patrick Mahomes? Like,
right.
Like,
yeah. Drop Patrick Mahomes in Cleveland.
Yeah. First. Right. Anywhere.
Absolutely.
Anywhere. Like, I don't know. You have to get pretty far down the list before I was like, nah, even Patrick Mahomes couldn't make the, I don't know. Like, who's down there? Like,
Carolina, the Giants.
Yeah, like I guess, you know, somebody like that. Like, look at Arizona. Like, Arizona's been miserable. Like, go give him Patrick Mahomes. Let me just see. I bet they'd be pretty darn good right away.
I agree. I don't know. Interesting. I'm curious to see where the comments are with this one. Like, what is the outlook for 2024? Do you guys think that this team, from a fan perspective, what do you want out of 2024? Obviously, you want a Super Bowl, but are you kind of thinking like Joe here, where it's more about 2025 and beyond if they can find their solution at quarterback? I want to know what people think on that.
And has your thought changed since the schedule release? Because I feel like the conversation has changed anyway. Whether or not people's actual feelings have changed, I definitely feel
that's hard for me to wrap my mind around, to be honest. Like, people feeling like it makes that much of, because you should just feel like they're going to get out of the gate really hot then and like be in a really good place before.
I think maybe part of it is that people just don't pay attention to who's on the schedule until they actually see the schedule, even though we've known since the end of the regular season who was going to be on it. Maybe people just don't look at it and they're like, oh my God, look at how hard the schedule is. Never mind. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. We do have a couple minutes left, Alan. Do you want me to bring up what I put out there yesterday that I was getting smoked for by a couple people calling me a liar?
We can do that, and we can also get Alan fired up about Cam Heyward again. We can do both of those things. Let's go. Why are you a liar, Smitty?
Because the Steelers, I was told yesterday, are showing interest in free agent wide receiver Michael Thomas. I put that out there on social media and got a lot of people, doing the whole source question mark thing to me, saying that I wasn't being honest about it. I'm just trying to get engagement on Twitter. Like, when have I ever done that? Like, people can go back and throughout.
If you were going
to
if you were going to engagement fish, it would be something funny, not that.
Sure, like Michael Thomas. I don't want it to happen. Like, why would I be the one putting that out there? Like, I do not want them to. I mean, at this point, I guess I'd be okay with it, but he's not certainly somebody that I was seeking the team to sign. So, but I do think it's interesting. I had reached out to somebody I think it was when DJ Chark signed, and I was like, listen, are you hearing anything in terms of like Steelers' interest in free agent wide receivers at this point? And they told me that the one name to watch would be Michael Thomas, just because of like what he brings inside, outside. His ability on like the quick slants is kind of where he's made his bread and butter. They think he could fit in the offense. And I was like, okay, well, I haven't like seen them linked to him whatsoever. So it was interesting that finally this is a conversation that had happened like when did Chark sign? A couple weeks ago. So like we're talking a couple weeks ago past. And then I did a text yesterday that they were showing, or they've at least reached out to Michael Thomas. What do you think about that? I mean, Michael Thomas at this point in his career hasn't really been Michael Thomas since 2019.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a long shot for me. Is it a long shot worth taking? I guess if you can't find anybody better, but I think I would be. You can't. It's folly to go into the season thinking that he's an answer. You gotta have either something better, or you gotta have a whole bunch of those. Like if you're throwing darts at it, if you're playing Moneyball, right, and you're saying like, okay, we got to find some pieces and take some. Don't buy one scratch off, buy a fistful. Sign Michael Thomas, but then you got to do some other stuff too. You gotta sign Martavis Bryant and Corey Davis and five other people that
just bring everybody to camp. And
right.
See what they look
Just bring in like 9 guys that are all potential number 2 wide receivers that aren't for whatever reason, and then give it a shot. I think that's a very poor choice, but maybe.
Yeah. I don't know if anything's going to come to fruition on this. And that's another part of it. People are like, oh, I can't wait till he signs elsewhere, or they do something else so I can come back to this.
That doesn't mean that I guarantee. Like, here's the thing. It's almost not news. Yes, Omar Khan has checked in on Michael Thomas. There's like one decent wide receiver left on the free agent market. I'm sure they've at least talked. Like obviously.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, but like if you're saying like, ew, Michael Thomas and holding your nose, like there ain't nobody better out there. I'm just saying, like,
right? And at least he has done it. Like, is he going to do it again? I don't know. Probably not. The odds would go against that.
I can't even tell you who is out there that like I don't even. It's now to the point where it's like they're all gone. Like I don't even know who else would be left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, a couple weeks ago, you would have had me saying I would rather have DJ Chark or Zay Jones probably, but here we are now. So I don't know. I still think that like they would probably rather go the trade route and get a bigger fish than this
Shepherd.
Yeah. No.
Nicole Hardman.
Mecole Hardman would be another one of the same. Like, okay, Calvin Austin again.
Right, like playing them out of position, right? Like I don't know. I guess just playing Hunter Renfrow out of position at some point just becomes like the best option, even though like there aren't, I don't know. Like I guess he could probably do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've kind of forgot about him, to be honest. I wonder if there has been
Russell Gage, Byron Pringle.
No,
it's a wasteland.
Pringle, we could maybe make do with some meme stuff to juice that edition, but like from an on-field perspective, nah, can't make it work. Yeah. What was the other Cam Heyward stuff you wanted to talk about?
Oh yeah, we talked about Cam yesterday, and I had somebody on Twitter ask me today, what is Cam's market value? Like it can't be 16 million, which is what he's set to make this year. And so I looked it up. Spotrac is projecting that it's not 16 million. It's significantly more. It's 3 years, 58 million. Now, look, Spotrac's projections aren't necessarily like
it's not gospel.
But I think that should put it into perspective. Like if Cam Heyward has another year like 2022 and then hits free agency, he's going to get a heck of a lot more than $16 million. Like, period. I think that's like, I'm not sure that people are recognizing what like Pro Bowl caliber defensive tackles at any age rate.
Yeah. And that's where the trepidation is because of the age. But again, if he goes out there and does it at 35, and no one would be having this conversation, I feel like, if he doesn't get hurt last year. Like, regardless of like
I still think nobody would be having the conversation if he didn't play hurt last year. If he just didn't come back. Mm-hmm. The last memory of everyone of Cam Heyward would be him dominating, then be like so excited for him to be back. like I don't know. It's so strange to me.
And the other part of this, and I brought this up before we started recording when we were just talking about, bringing it up, was it's all about the guarantees. Like if he were to sign a contract similar to that, 3 years, 58 million, like unless that is, pretty much all, which it wouldn't be. Like I would be more concerned about how much of that is being guaranteed, how much of it is being paid out in the first 2 years. Like that's where my focus lies at with a potential Cam Heyward extension, not about what that, match value is on it.
Yeah. I mean, Fletcher Cox got 10 million last year. Like, and he was a part-time player. Like, clearly a part-time player. Like, I think that's where I would be on a deal like this. Something like guarantee is 16 this year, throw some more money in, and then maybe something along the lines of like 12 and 8 for the next 2, and not that much of it guaranteed. I think but I think people also have kind of overstated how old 35 is for a defensive lineman. It's not that old. Like those guys can play a long time. I'm not.
How old is Fletcher Cox?
Fletcher Cox is 33.
Okay.
But like Calais Campbell was 37 last year. He's still talking about maybe playing this year. Like,
yeah,
it's not crazy for guys to, you don't need
but in terms of
explosiveness is what you lose as you age, not strength. And you don't need that much explosiveness to be a defensive tackle.
In terms of production for 35-plus-year-old defensive tackles, do we have any, guys that we could look at there and say, like, this is maybe something to look at in terms of Cam? Like, obviously, Cam could be a better player than most of those guys, but I'm just curious, like, if we have a track record there with 35-plus-year-old defensive tackles.
Yeah, so Campbell was never really, the kind of player that Cam was throughout his peak, but I think a pretty similar career. But he didn't have the big injury, like Cam did. But he had 6.5 sacks in 19 at 33, and he had 6.5 sacks last year at 37. In between, it was 4, 1.5, 5. But he played for 3 different teams. He was moving around, doing different, actually changed position. So it's hard to say, like, how much of a good example that is. But I mean, he repeated his age 33 season at age 37,
right? Okay.
Which I mean should tell you that it's certainly capable. It's certainly possible. Like, and Cam is. The other thing somebody else brought up, very interestingly, considering how durable he's been in terms of his injury history, which is really one injury and now 2 injuries in his entire career, but he didn't start his first 2 years, and so like probably like compared to the average 35-year-old, not as many miles on him as some other guys, didn't kind of most players that are first round picks do not wait until their 3rd year to start. So I think maybe that could play into his health and his durability as well, and it could be a reason why. But man, just 2 injuries in his whole what is it now, 13 or 12-year career, going on 13 years, and so I think that's the one thing you should expect is that he'll be able to play.
That's interesting, is the tread on the tires thing. Like, people say the same, obviously different position, but like Rodgers sitting for 4 years. So like, he doesn't have the same amount of tread on his tires as a quarterback that is his age.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right. Anything else?
I think that's it, man.
Okay.
Enjoy the weekend, and we'll come back and do it again next week. We got OTAs on Tuesday. So,
oh yeah, there we go. You're not going to see Landon Roberts there. You will see Landon Roberts there.
See a man in the number 50 jersey with the name. Well, they don't have their names on them, but it was with Landon Roberts' body in there. I actually want to go back and find the clip from last year's training camp about me telling you all about him for the first time, because I think it's pretty good. We'll not see Cam Heyward. We won't see Cam Heyward at all. Apparently, we'll see if he's there or not. But he's said he's not participating. And I don't know, just stay tuned. It wouldn't totally shock me if this thing gets resolved pretty quickly here. I think.
Okay. I was, actually, what he should have said this is E-Rob, not Cam, was you don't see E-Rob at OTAs. You see a Landon.
Well, you see Landon Roberts.
And then he turns into E-Rob.
Yeah.
A training camp. Yeah.
E-Rob is a bad man.
There we go. Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
Saunders _PGH Steelers Now. SteelersNow.com. Please, if you're not already signed up over there, you go get signed up for our stuff and make sure you just check out the content, share it. Like I said, we've been having some algorithm banalities, and so go give us a click. We could use it right now. And yeah, that's it. Have a good weekend.
There we go. Like, subscribe, hit that notification bell down below. Hit us in the comments with anything that we talked about on today's episode, a question for a future episode, all that good stuff. Leave us a 5-star review and subscribe if you're listening somewhere else, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. You can find the Steelers Afternoon Drive there. I am Zachary Smith, Saunders, and myself. Thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.